Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining today's Getting the Most from Connect Fonts webinar. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we dive in. This meeting room maxes out at around 1,000 people, and 1,300 folks have registered to attend. So if some folks aren't able to get in today, our apologies. We'll make sure to follow up with recording of the webinar so they can still participate offline. Additionally, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A section available on your Zoom menu below. Due to the volume of attendees, we may not be able to answer all your questions today. If we aren't able to get to your questions, we'll make sure to follow up via email within 3 business days. That said, let's go ahead and get started. Just a quick introduction of the folks on the call today. First up, we have Walter Townsend, a top CSM from our UK office.
Hi, everyone. I've been with Extensis about 3 years. I look after all our European customers in both English, French, and German. The British accent comes naturally. I don't have to put it on. So apologies if that's a bit distracting, or I strayed into too many Anglicisms. Great to see everyone on the call, and fantastic to see so many people here.
Thank you, Walter. And next up, we have Taylor, another top CSM, this time from our Texas location, currently in an ice storm.
Thanks, Patrick. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I've been with Extensis for almost 2 years now. Happy to get in to connect and answer all the questions we've been getting.
And we're very lucky today to have Jeff Johnson, our esteemed Senior Global Manager of Support, helping us with our Q&A section.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Glad to have you here. I've been with Extensis for about 7 years and been working in the creative field for almost 30. So happy to be here and look forward to answering some of the questions on the live chat. As Patrick said, if we don't get to them, we will get to them. So post those on there and I'll type as fast as I can.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And lastly, I'm Patrick. I'm the Director of Success here at Extensis. And my key focus is Connect Fonts, and specifically the most important part of Connect Fonts, our customers. This webinar is a result of feedback we've received from folks just like you. If you'd like to hear about different topics, please let us know, and we'll keep doing things like this to stay engaged with our customers. Here's a quick list of topics we're going to review today. To kick things off, let's dive into the relationship between the desktop app and the cloud app. To be honest, I think we could have done a better job launching our cloud application because it has caused quite a bit of confusion with our customers. As a Connect customer, it's possible you've heard some or all of these terms at some point. Today, we'd like to take a quick moment and explain how all these terms interact with each other and what exactly you get when you invest in Connect Fonts. I know this has been an area of confusion for some of our customers. So, and I apologize for the quick history lesson, but I think it'll help a little bit. So in the beginning, we had 2 small, medium business offerings. Suitcase Fusion is a desktop app designed to help individuals manage their fonts. TeamSync is essentially the same desktop app, but configured for use with teams. Connect Fonts is essentially Suitcase Fusion and TeamSync squashed together. Previous Suitcase Fusion and TeamSync customers can now take advantage of all the team sharing and cloud functionality available in Connect at no additional charge. Their Suitcase Fusion or TeamSync logins will work with Connect Fonts. On the enterprise side, we have Universal Type Server, or commonly known as UTS. This is a traditional on-premise piece of software designed to be installed on a custom server and managed by an IT professional. Universal Type Client is a desktop app designed for the end users. Many UTS customers have already migrated over to Connect Fonts. We've made this possible by introducing enterprise functionality into Connect Fonts. Things like single sign-on, which was launched last year. Oops, I had that wrong. Things like analytics, which we launched and continue to build out, and then font licensing, which we launched last week. And I'll show you a little brief bit about that a bit later. To get the remaining UTS customers over, we'll continue to introduce new functionality like advanced permissions and more. The good news for our Connect customers is everyone will have access to these enterprise level features at no additional cost. If you go into your Connect admin area today, you'll find single sign-on, analytics, and licensing available to you. All right, so that's the history lesson. What exactly is Connect? What do you get when you buy Connect? Well, Connect is a desktop app, which was previously known as Suitcase Fusion or TeamSync. And Connect also includes a cloud platform at no additional cost. And this cloud platform syncs with the desktop app. So if you visit connect.extensis.com, your existing Connect, Suitcase, or TeamSync logins will enable you to access Connect's online platform. The cloud and desktop app sync immediately, enabling you to choose which platform you prefer to work through. So what exactly is the difference between the two? Well, the desktop app is required for you to activate fonts. This is the mechanism that tells your computer to activate a font locally on your machine. Even as we transition into more cloud functionality, a desktop app of some kind will most likely always be required to enable activation. The local app also gives you the benefit of locally caching all of your fonts so you can work if you lose internet connectivity, like Taylor over in her ice storm right now. The desktop app also connects with your Adobe Creative Cloud by leveraging local plugins. These plugins enable Creative Cloud products to auto-activate fonts. If you've ever opened an Adobe document and had a missing font, you'll immediately realize the power of auto-activation with these plugins. Our customers tell us that each auto-activation saves them 30 to 60 seconds of hunting for fonts manually. And lastly, the desktop app is a great tool for managing your font libraries. On the web app, you'll have similar ability to manage and organize your fonts, with the added benefit that it works anywhere where you have internet access. The web app is where you'll find most of the team sharing functionality, enhanced searching, and font pairing. For admins, you'll find user-controlled permissions, folder sharing, single sign-on, analytics, and font licensing here as well. Speaking frankly, much of our future development is primarily focused on the web experience. So if you're looking for the latest font management experience, we recommend defaulting to using the web client. And if you're worried that the web experience might slow you down, here's a quick live demo activating between the two systems. So let me pull that up real quick, and I'll just show you very briefly what that looks like when you're using either system. So I'm going to switch to my other monitor, stand by. So this is what the web experience looks like. And then you might be familiar with Connect, the desktop client experience. So what I'm going to do is put one side of my monitor here, the other one on this side of the monitor. And I'm going to bring up the same team shared library. And what you'll find is I have the same font, A Love of Thunder. This is one of my favorite fonts to use for this example, just because it's fun sounding, I guess. And then you see it over here in the web experience, A Love of Thunder. You'll see that on both, it's inactive. And if I go to the web experience, what I want you to do is focus on this green or this gray icon on the desktop app. When I click permanent over here in the web experience, did you notice how immediately it activated on the desktop experience? So even when I tested this as an employee, I was impressed with how quickly it worked. And I'd recommend all of you give this a try. And I think you'll find the web experience is essentially the same speed and doesn't introduce latency into your experience. And just very briefly, I'll show you in the admin area is where you'll find things like managing your users, the font libraries, our new analytics area, directory services or single sign-on is located here. And then this little icon down here that some of you might not have seen yet is our new font licensing functionality. Here you'll be able to add licenses to each of your fonts and track them along with everything else. So that's a quick preview of the experience between the desktop and web app and the lack of latency there. Let's go ahead and move forward. Along with general confusion around the web app, we find the initial setup during installation causes quite a bit of confusion for our end users as well. I'll quickly review some of the top questions related to the installation of Connect fonts, and some of my team members will help expand upon each subject. So to start things off, the best way to install Connect fonts is by visiting connect.extensis.com. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can go to our website, extensis.com, and hunt for the support areas. I find if you're just trying to find the desktop app, just go to connect.extensis.com and click on the Fonts tab, which is this little tab right here. When you click on it and you don't have the desktop app installed, you'll get this little pop-up. It says additional software is needed. You want to make sure you download the installer by clicking download and then opening up the executable file found within. And when you do, the first thing you'll be presented with is our EULA. So go ahead and read through that and hopefully click agree. The next screen presents you with questions about your font vaults. If you'd like to use Google Fonts, the next screen presents you with questions about your font vaults and if you'd like to use Google Fonts. These two topics in particular are common sources of support tickets. To add some detail around font vaults, we have Taylor Howard to provide more detail around font vaults.
Thanks, Patrick. What is a font vault? A font vault is where all your fonts are located when uploading them to Connect. The vault allows Connect to know exactly where to target when auto-activating. If you choose to not make a font vault upon install and rather leave them in place, it can cause issues in the future. If you move a font, it will break the connection for activating and you will get a missing font error. This is why we recommend to create the font vault. This also allows the ability to work offline. The location of the font vault on your computer can be found by selecting Connect Fonts in the top left corner of the desktop app and going to Preferences. If you do need to have multiple users on one machine using Connect, you will need to create a font vault for each user since it is connected through a UUID, which is a unique user identification. In this case, it's the user's email. If this is something you have more questions about, we have a few support articles on extensis.com or reach out to your CSM. And with that, I'll kick it back to Patrick.
Thank you, Taylor. And to add some details around Google Fonts, here's Walter Townsend.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes. Along with your local fonts and fonts assigned to you via any team library you might be a member of, Connect Fonts can also show you fonts from your Adobe Creative Cloud and from a Google Fonts. Let's start with Google Fonts. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen. Patrick, can you stop sharing so that I can start sharing, please?
Sure thing.
My apologies, I seem to be having a little bit of trouble finding the option to share my screen. Patrick, do you want to carry on and I'll see whether I can locate that, please?
Sure. Yeah, and it should be in your Zoom menu at the bottom, the green button next to the recording and polls and Q&A.
There you are. Yes, it is. There it is indeed. Now you say it, it's there. I can only blame the fact that it's late here in the UK, as opposed to early over in the States. So here we are looking at my Connect Fonts screen, and we can see that we have got Google Fonts up here at the moment. So let's have a look at that. And you can see that Google currently make around 5,000 fonts available to use on a free basis. It's possible to use these in your projects. Connect shows these fonts as a personal cloud-based library, and you can check for updates by going through here and using Add Google Fonts. However, Google can also remove fonts on a permanent basis from the collection, and if they do so, there is no guarantee they'll ever be re-added, or if they are, they may be considered as a new font rather than an update to an existing one. This may require you to update any documents you've used that font in before our plugins can auto-activate the fonts in that file. We often get asked whether you can add your own fonts into Google, but this isn't possible. However, if you contact Google, they may be open to adding any given font to the service in the future. You can email them at fonts@google.com. That's fonts@google.com. The Creative Cloud service from Adobe also makes around 10,000 fonts available for you. Fonts that you activate in your Creative Cloud will sync into the Adobe Fonts section of Connect. Let's have a look and see how that works. I've got an option here to activate the family of Montserrat, which comprises of 18 fonts. And you'll see that in a moment, they will sync into my Connect. You can use Connect to deactivate an Adobe font on your machine, but to totally remove an Adobe font from Connect, you need to deactivate it in Creative Cloud. So let's take Agenda Medium as an example. I need to go up here and actually deselect it before it'll be removed entirely from Connect. It's important to note that Adobe fonts are not copied into the font vault, which Taylor just talked about. This means you can't import them into sets in your font libraries, and they must remain exclusively in the Adobe Fonts folder here under the third-party fonts. There are some potential pitfalls to be aware of when using these fonts other than what I've already mentioned. Certain fonts are available in both Google and Adobe, as well as existing independently. If you have multiple versions of the same font, you need to make sure the correct version of the font is being activated. duplicate fonts from Google or Adobe or from other sources will show under the Smart Search duplicate fonts, and we'll talk to you a little bit more about them during this webinar. Adobe will frequently encourage you to use their version of the font, and if you don't intend to do this, you need to pay attention to their messages when you launch a file. Otherwise, you may find a different version of the font is activated to the one you expect. You'll need to manually correct this when you've updated the font panels to the correct fonts. You should use Save As to prompt our plugin to recreate the data our plugin uses to make sure the correct version of the font is activated the next time you launch that file. If you're having sustained issues in this regard, our support team can provide some tips to deal with this. Patrick, back to you.
Thank you, Walter. Okay, thanks for adding that detail. And once you've decided what's best for you and your organization, go ahead and click Continue. This is where you'll select which Adobe products you have installed. In order for auto activation to work, you want to make sure to install these plugins. To talk a little bit more about how to interact with these plugins, we wanted to welcome back Walter to give you some added insight.
Thanks very much, Patrick. The great news is I've worked out where the share screen option is now, so we can get straight to the meat and potatoes of discussing plugins straight away. The ability to activate fonts automatically into your Adobe programs is one of the most important features of Connect, and is extremely useful, we find. Via Manage Plugins, you can see what version of the plugin you have installed. Connect supports the last 3 versions of the Adobe Creative Cloud software. You can check precisely which version of the plugins you have installed here. If you see a message that you're missing plugins here, you can use Install All Plugins to force the system to update the plugins. We always recommend to quit any Adobe software that's running before doing this. When you have plugins installed via Connect within InDesign, it's possible to alter the way that the plugin behaves. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. If you select the drop-down menu Type, you'll see a Connect Fonts option showing down here, and from here, under the auto activation preferences, you can alter the way the plugin works. We absolutely recommend leaving the first option ticked, but the second option, Pick Best Match when original is missing, can fairly radically alter the way your plugin behaves. With it deselected, if there are missing fonts when you launch a document, our plugin will step in, alert you to these missing fonts, and suggest possible alternatives that it can find in your collection. With this option ticked, however, that activation of the alternative font happens automatically. This option is a matter of personal preference and to what extent you want to maintain control over which fonts are active. The third option can have a significant effect on the speed our plugins function. This option attempts to activate fonts in embedded objects. We can sometimes see a lag in performance if those assets are on a network share or are very large, and so this can cause a drain on resources. You may find the plugin performs better with it deselected. Having the fourth option selected can also slow the plugin down, especially if a certain font has a large number of alternative weights. In terms of when fonts should be deactivated, you can have both these options checked or just one. If you're struggling with an issue of question marks in your emails, and this is something we hear from our user base somewhat frequently, you may find to select On Document Close helpful. In this way, when you save and quit a document you're working on that has potentially alternative Helveticas embedded into it that are causing an issue for the system, by quitting the file, the system versions of Helvetica should become free and your emails and websites readable once again. With the exception of the font family option, these configuration options don't exist in our other plugins such as for Illustrator, After Effects, or Photoshop. Patrick, let's hand it back to you.
Awesome, thank you, Walter. All right, so once you decide which plugins you want to install, go ahead and click Continue. We recommend selecting Check for Updates automatically to ensure you always have the most secure, feature-rich, and compatible version available to you. So once you decide that, go ahead and click Continue. This final congratulations screen also mentions you can check the top box to disable system fonts. This has been an area of confusion, particularly for our Mac users because of the large quantity of required system fonts. To expand on this subject one more time, please welcome back Walter.
Thanks very much, Patrick. You won't get rid of me quite that easily. System fonts are fonts that are included with your machine, and the quantity, organization, and sort that you get depend on the type of machine you're running and what operating system you have. The Apple platform organizes fonts into true system fonts, as well as giving end users the option to add their own fonts into either the user or the local fonts folders. System fonts can be viewed through the native application on Mac called FontBook. You can see it here. Connect Fonts also allows you to view these fonts, visible here. We don't typically recommend you add fonts via FontBook or these user and local folders, as they can cause font conflicts where multiple fonts of the same PostScript name are activated at the same time. You can get a complete list of all your active fonts by launching the System Report option, which is available from the Apple menu and from About This Mac, and then launching the System Report. I've got mine open already, and there's an option here that allows you to view the fonts and also includes a handy location here to show you exactly where that font might be coming from in terms of its activation. System fonts with a padlock cannot be deactivated by Connect. On recent versions of macOS, we usually see just under 800 system fonts, although we have observed with the release of Ventura, a further 500 fonts added, which show under a new folder in Connect called Other. Windows 10 and 11, on the other hand, come with far fewer fonts, around 170. And if you install Microsoft Office, roughly the same number again are added to take you to around 310 in total. Active fonts can be viewed through the control panel, or for a deeper look, the system registry. It's possible for end users to add local fonts if you're using a version of Windows 10, 18 or 9 or higher. Again, we don't recommend activating fonts in this way as it bypasses Connect. We know that some people struggle with the issue of websites or emails not being displayed correctly, and we may even have some people on the call and the webinar today suffering with that. So one of the first questions support will ask you if you do choose to reach out to us is how many system fonts you have active, and may ask you for a screenshot of Connect fonts similar to what you can see here, showing our support guys and girls how many system fonts, how many local and user fonts you have activated. Is a great way for us to start drilling down into what's causing the issue. The issue with fonts being replaced with question marks is often caused by other versions of Active Helvetica. I'm not going to do it right now, but if I go here through Helvetica, you can actually see I've got a smart search here, which I've just entitled Helvetica. I'm searching in all up here, rather than in just one specific folder. And you can see that it's showing me all my Helveticas that are active. You can see that each one of these is a system font because it's opened, it's got a green padlock icon against it. Now, if I remove this Helvetica activation, so now I'm just looking for all my Helveticas, you'll suddenly see that the number increases quite substantially. And theoretically, I could activate these fonts. The system will warn me because I'm trying to activate more than 100 fonts, but actually, even if I went ahead and activated this, not this many fonts would be activated because many of these are genuine duplicates that share the same PostScript name, and you can't activate more than one font with the same PostScript name. If I were to go ahead and activate this, I would get an outcome very similar to what we can see here on a screenshot I captured earlier. You can see those question marks. And the reason for those question marks, I'll just tell you, is actually because of a font that steps in to manage this, which we call Last Resort. This is the font that's being used to display them. And as you can see, the entire glyph collection is made up of question marks. We can only assume this is Apple's idea, a little joke. It's the font of last resort. And that's why it steps in and manages that for you. Now, we do have a knowledge base article if you're confronted with the dreaded question marks. However, if you refrain from adding fonts directly into the system, unless our plugins activate and deactivate your fonts when you need them, you shouldn't encounter this issue. I'm going to put a link to the knowledge base article in the chat, so that if anyone at this current time is having that issue, feel free to take a look at that. It's written by Jeff, who is doing his best to answer questions here, so I can vouchsafe for the quality of the information contained within it. Support are also often asked if it's possible to remove non-linguistically appropriate fonts from the system fonts profile. Whilst these fonts can be annoying and they clutter up context menus and InDesign, Connect Fonts isn't designed to help you remove these, and Apple have done a lot of work lately to prevent users from removing these. Furthermore, we don't recommend removing any system font because it can lead to system instability if you could remove the wrong one. And with that, I'll hand back to Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. I always learn a lot and when you speak, so appreciate you going through that. So from here, you basically select the choices based on what Walter talked about, and you click Finish. Now you're done installing Connect Fonts. So switching gears, another topic that has been a challenge for our customers is duplicate fonts. And to talk through best practices for duplicate fonts, please welcome back Taylor.
Thanks, Patrick. Issues with duplicate fonts usually occur when you are working within a project in Creative Cloud and you notice it is activating the wrong version of a font. The best way to identify duplicates is to see which one should be activated by using the Smart Search folders in the desktop app. Smart Search folders are a feature in Connect that allow even more organization and ease of searchability within Connect. For example, you can create a Smart Search folder for PostScript Type 1 fonts that will show all the PostScript fonts you have in your team libraries. You can also switch which libraries you want to view in the Smart Search folder by using the search toggle in the top right. The desktop app comes with preset search folders, one of them being duplicates, which are pulled via PostScript names. So when you find that a project file is activating the incorrect version of a font, in this case, we will use the PostScript version of Friday the 13th, go to the duplicate Smart Search folder, find the Friday the 13th PostScript version, and deactivate it. Then activate the TrueType version, which is the version we want to use in this case. Go back into your file you are working in, check that the correct font is activated, and click Save As. This way, the next time you open that file, it would be the correct font. You then can make the decision to either keep that duplicate Connect font or keep the duplicate font in Connect, but save it in another library that's not to be used, or delete it out of Connect altogether. You can still save it somewhere on your machine before removing from Connect if you ever need to re-add, but removing it from Connect will ensure it does not activate again. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. I'll kick this back to Patrick.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. Switch my screens again. All right. All right, so if you still have remaining questions, please add them to the Q&A section below. Or if you check us out on YouTube, and you can find a bunch of great information there. From YouTube, you can simply search for Connect Fonts Training Playlist. If you do that in the search menu, you'll find all the videos listed over here on the right. And if we weren't able to answer any of your questions posted in the Q&A, we'll make sure to follow up via email offline. And we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join our webinar. We hope this was helpful to you. We've kept it kind of short and hoping that you can use the time back, but by all means, we're happy to do these again. If you want to learn about something else, please post it in the Q&A section below, and we'll make sure to cover it in our next webinar. I'll leave the Q&A active for another minute before we close the webinar in case you didn't get a chance to add in your questions. But otherwise, we really appreciate you joining. We hope you found some value, and thank you so much for your time and for your business.